Hello explorers, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to another exciting and informative video on our YouTube channel. If you are joining us for the first time, we want to appreciate your time. In today's episode, we are looking at Nigeria's new leader's ambition start and the stiff challenges that awaits him or her. President Bola Tinubu has taken daring steps to stabilize Nigeria's public finances, but more is needed to realize the potential of the oil-rich, endowed country. We shall be exploring this like never before seen. I will dive into specifics, why President Tinubu's free market approach differs from his predecessor. I will also look into Africa's most populous countries suffer from the repeated governance failure. I will also close down to looking at if the state continues to underperform, democracy and fatigue may bring its end to an unrealized end. I will also look into some other specifics. I will paint the scenario to you so we have a better picture. I will encourage you to watch this video to the end for clarity and better understanding. So without any more delay, let's just dive straight into it. From several critical perspectives, the last 8 years was a period of lost opportunity for Nigeria. President Mohammed Buhari from 2015 to 2023 promised to improve the economy and security and crack down on corruption. However, during his 2 terms of office following 2015 general election, which generated high hopes, Nigeria's economic and security outlook deteriorated. The country's influence in the region on the African continent has weakened, while internal challenges like nation building and improving federalism remain unresolved. Moving ahead, since May 29 of 2023, newly elected President Bola Tinubu has faced a narrow window of opportunity to introduce reforms. However, the outlook for Africa's most populous country and largest economy remains clouded. If you look at the badly mismanaged country, until recently, Nigeria had the highest number of destitute people living below $1.9 per day. Looking at different specifics, India assumed this dubious mantle in 2022. If you look at other areas, according to official data, 2/3 of Nigerians live in multi-dimensional poverty, a measure of household poverty along 3 dimensions: monetary, education, and also basic infrastructure. With a median age of 18, the country will soon reach a demographic window of opportunity, a situation where, if you look at other aspects, the ratio between dependents in the population and the working age group is the most advantageous. Unfortunately, due to President Mohammed Buhari's failure to respond to the challenges and seize on the opportunities of high population growth, the country is at risk of falling into traps of demographic fatigue, proving unable to respond to multiple stress caused by high fertility. If you look at other aspects, over the past 8 years, Nigeria's economic growth was slow and interrupted by 2 recessions in 2016 and 2022. The mediocre performance can be attributed to external shocks such as the commodity prices crash in 2014 and 2015 and by 2022, and the effects of the pandemic. However, it was also the result of policy choices. Generally, the combination of weak economic growth and also ongoing demographic explosion inevitably pushes up poverty rates. Looking at 13 million Nigerian residents living in these conditions will have been added between 2019 and 2025, according to the World Bank Business and Baseline projection. Alarmingly, 2/3 of Nigerians' youths are either unemployed or underemployed. Moving forward, the country is also sinking deeper into debt. It has entered a vicious cycle, repeatedly funding budget deficits with more borrowing. From 2016 to 2023, Nigerian deficit financing has risen by 370%, according to the country's budget office. In 2022, according to the World Bank, debt servicing consumed over 93 to 96% of Nigeria's revenue, although the country's finance minister has disrupted that particular figures, claiming that he disputed this issue in looking at that the country's figures was just over 80.6%. Moving forward, the Nigerian government's choices to monetize the deficit, the practice of borrowing money from the central bank to finance public expenditure, further accelerated inflation. It reached 18.8%, a 21-year high. In 2022, foreign direct investment, the FDI, dramatically decreased between 2014 and 2022 from $2.2 billion to just over 470 million, and in 2028 Ghana overtook Nigeria as the main investment destination in West Africa. As we see figures at the moment, Kenya is competing top at the level looking at foreign direct investment. The economic and security outlook are interconnected. Poverty is one of the drivers of crime, banditry, radicalization and ethnic tension, while stability and security and unnecessary conditions for growth and development. President Tinubu faces security challenges in all of Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones. In the northeast, Boko Haram has been weakened after the 2021 death of its leader, Abubakar Shekau. However, other groups like the Islamic State West African Province or the Ansaru, the Vanguard for the protection of Muslims in Black Africa, are increasingly their operational and recruitment reach beyond the regions. In the northwest, organized banditry has increased along with the number of gangs and ethnic militias as well. Looking at other areas in the country's middle belt, there is ethnic communal and conflict between the herders and the farmers over land and water. During former President Buhari's rule, there was also a revival of Biafra separationism. In the southwest region, pipeline vandalism and oil theft, in which public officials take part, had reached unprecedented levels. By 2022, Nigeria was losing over 470,000 barrels of oil a day to oil theft, according to the Nigerian Petroleum Corporation Limited, the NNPC. If you look at amid ongoing fuel scarcity and food inflation, the risk of riots in urban areas remains a sword of Damocles hanging over the head of the government at the moment. Let's look at radically different approach being taken at the moment. Like his predecessor, President Tinubu starts with a program prioritizing the economy and security, but while it comes from the same playbook and party, the All Progressive Congress, Mr. Tinubu departs from its statistics protectionist approaches and practices. In 2022, the cost of importing refined oil product topped the income from crude oil export. As a result, the country was financially hit by rising global prices despite being a major oil producer. As expected, the new president's first important policy decision was ending the fuel subsidy, as he announced at his inauguration. The subsidy had been in place since 1970s when it was introduced to mitigate the effects of rising oil prices. In 2012, then President Goodluck Jonathan eliminated the budget boosting program. However, the announcement led to the week of violence, protests, and also strikes and emergence of the occupation of Nigerian protest movement. The subsidy was eventually restored. Nigeria is Africa's top oil producer, but imports around 90% of the refined petroleum products it needed for domestic consumption. Crude oil production, the country's main source of revenue, declined by almost 40% between 2012 and 2021 due to the accumulation of factors including lack of investment, deterioration of infrastructure, mismanagement, and oil theft. In 2022, the cost of importing refined oil products topped the income from a crude oil export. As a result, the country was financially hit, as was pointed out, by rising global prices despite being a major oil producer. Energy will be a crucial domain for the new administration. Adopting the Petroleum Industry Act in 2021 and the privatization of the NNPC in 2022 created conditions for restructuring the sector. President Tinubu is expected to deliver it through the Energy Vision of 2030 plan, which sets an ambitious target of expanding production capacity to 4 million barrels daily. It also commits the government to sell major stakes of the NNPC, now held by Petroleum and Finance Ministries. Shortly after coming to office, Mr. Tinubu, a United States-trained accountant before entering politics, also changed the course of Nigeria's monetary policy. The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria has been replaced, fixed exchanges rates have been abandoned, and also national currency, the Naira, now trades freely at market-defined rates. If you look at other aspects concerning Nigeria's situation, the new administration is also expected to introduce changes in foreign policy to rebuild Nigeria's influence within the African Union. President Buhari's rule coincided with African Union's reform and deeper trade integration with the 2018 African Continental Free Trade Area, the ACFTA. Nigeria, however, was one of the last countries to sign the ratified agreement, as Mr. Buhari's preferred a protectionist approach. Another concern is restoring Nigeria's position as the economic community of West African states, ECOWAS leader, which Nigeria has been struggling and the ECOWAS has been struggling itself at the moment. Considering what's happening in many of those countries, especially what's going on in Niger at the moment, ECOWAS has been a failure in several areas. On the international stage, Nigeria has expressed its desire to join BRICS, a grouping of world economics of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and also South Africa, along with Ethiopia, Egypt, and Algeria. Considering the competition between geopolitics blocs, Nigeria's joining BRICS could create tension between Abuja and Washington. If you look at Mr. Tinubu's narrow window of opportunity happening at the moment, as he faces the country's economic and security challenges, the new president holds some trump cards. The first is that voters tend to give the benefits of the doubt to recently elected leaders. While Nigeria's powerful labor unions announced strikes and protests after removing the fuel subsidy, they eventually suspended them and initially talks with the government. The scrapping of the population but costly measures in effect for over 50 years did not come as a surprise, and there was a growing consensus among decision makers that the subsidy was not sustainable. Another advantage of the president in his own record of success in the country's largest city, the so-called Lagos model, which according to the supporters could be replicated nationally. As governor of Lagos between 1999 and 2007, Mr. Tinubu presided over a period of growth in the local economy and the metropolis, attracting investment and innovation. However, the new president has some weaknesses too. He was elected with only 27% voters turnaround, and turnout to the point out the lowest since the country's 1999 transition to democracy and his victory in being challenged in the courts. The election's results are not expected to be nullified, given the information, but also almost ironclad rules Nigerians' politics and the president's rotation between the country's three main ethnic groups and the south and northern regions. These practices favor Mr. Tinubu's victory, but his political position is now precarious. As we close down this episode, lacking decisive population support and precedents, it's already negatively challenging waters. The population, especially in the urban areas, feel the impact of his decisions. Fuel prices increases are leading to a higher transport cost and soaring food prices. There are, however, also tentative signs of positive change. The country's daily petroleum consumption has dropped by 28% since the fuel subsidies ended in May, from the previous average of almost 70 million liters to a notch over about 48 million liters in June of 2023, according to official data. Oil production has increased in 2023, as has the country's processing capacity. The Dangote refinery a $18 billion mega project first announced in 2013 was inaugurated in May. It is expected to reach a full processing capacity of 650,000 barrels per day before the end of the year. The Port Harcourt refinery also aimed to become operational later in 2023. If you close down this episode looking at the scenario in Nigeria, President Tinubu is in a race against time. Instability will likely return in 2024 or even before the citizens in urban areas cope with the high cost of living. The evolution of oil prices and domestic oil production will define the new administration's ability to avoid unrest and potential political uprising without reversing its pro-market reforms. The oil and gas sector accounts for about 65% of Nigeria's revenue and more than 85% of its total export. The economy will not escape this overdependency in the short to medium term. The decisive economic security nexus is important. Not all is lost for Nigeria so far, based on my analysis. However, Nigeria is not about to join the ranks of failed states. Despite the challenges to the state sovereignty in the principality and the peripheral areas of the country of Nigeria, whether from terrorism, banditry, or separationism, the central state has been able to retain the core of political power and legitimacy. And despite the clamor for deemed political reform, there are no alternative movements to replace the current regime or the country's political elite. Security institutions like the police and army, while underfunded, weakened by corruption, and often spread thin by also multiplying security challenges, remain operational and under the command of political power. And while economic situation remains precarious, oil income saves the day in Nigeria. Like in Angola, political fragmentation or financial collapse scenarios remains unlikely for now, unless the governing business as usually continues against the hopes. Nigeria is a great country in the continent of Africa. Despite those different challenges, we all shall be looking on how the new President Tinubu will navigate these milky waters and centralize Nigeria again to become the major player in West Africa and take its position in ECOWAS and also drive the African growth and in different areas. We want to thank you for watching. Hopefully we've informed you with regards to the situation in Nigeria. If you are new to this channel, we encourage you to check some of our informative videos on this YouTube channel. We are looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.